Hey everyone. If you own a home or cottage in Muskoka, you know that this place can be as unpredictable as it is beautiful. A burst pipe in the middle of winter, a basement full of water after a summer storm, or smoke damage from a fire. These are all moments that stop things in their tracks. And today's guest shows up for people in exactly those moments. So, in this episode, we're joined by fifth generation Muskokan licensed engineer and owner of PuroClean Restoration North Simcoe Muskoka, Eric Gonneau. Eric, thanks so much for coming on. I know you're no stranger to the podcast.
Why, thank you for having me. Great to be
Uh,
here.
yeah, thank you. No, we bumped into each other at the recent Cottage Live show. It was great to see you in
Yeah.
person and to quickly connect. But yeah, I can only imagine it's been an extremely busy weekend for you at that and connecting with everyone who wants to learn about what's going on for the upcoming cottage season.
Yes, it's always a lot of anticipated, eager folks in March who we see at the Cottage Life Show who
Yep.
can't wait for the warm weather to arrive and get back up to the cottage. But unfortunately, for some of those folks, their first return to the cottage come with some unwelcome surprises. And
Yes.
yes,
Yes, and that's where you can help. I can only imagine the surprise of getting there for the first time of the year and finding an unwelcome guest, such as we talked about a raccoon or red squirrels or things like that, or a couple inches of water in the basement from a sump pump that stopped working during the thaw period. So, yeah, there's no shortage of
uh,
different things that people can encounter during that first trip back up to the cottage that you guys can help assess, understand, and then come up with a good solution to make sure everyone's moving in the right direction. So, Eric, you've been in the Muskoka area for 5 generations, and I remember we talked about this before. What's one thing that you really appreciate about the region, and as we get into the summer months, that makes you excited? Is it the steamboat tours on the lake? Is it the hiking on the trails? What do you get excited about when you look for?
well, I mean, summer is a magical time in Muskoka. And
Yeah.
if it wasn't for the lakes, we'd have a different experience here. Not knocking it, but the lakes really make a difference. And we have a variety of lakes in the area here, and some like the big open waters of Georgian Bay, and Muskoka, as you know, extends all the way from Georgian Bay all the way up to Halliburton. You get the three or four lakes in the middle, and then you get the smaller lakes that are a lot more secluded and a lot more smaller. And every lake gives its ability to do different things and enjoy different aspects.
For sure. Yeah, no, there's a lot of different like vibes when it comes to lakes, depending on what you're into, if that's like wake surfing or just relaxing in a canoe. It's important to understand what the vibe is that you're looking for before you either buy a place or rent a place. Knowing what kind of lake you're getting into definitely helps make sure that expectations are met.
Exactly. Some people like the solitude and the reclusiveness of being on a small lake, and they're not into power sports, and they like their
Mhm.
canoes and the silence, and that's great.
Yeah.
Other people love to be able to see all the steamships and the big ships out on the big three lakes and all the history that has gone on to developing and all the island and everything else like that. And some people love the sailing and the boating on the big open Georgian Bay, and there's nothing better than getting out on a sailboat and heeling over the side of it as the wind howls in and you go
Yeah,
there. But it's just different. So
for
depends
sure.
on what you're looking for and whether you're looking for a secluded lake where you're the one and only person there, or out for adventures, whether it's motorsports or out on the big lakes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's really something for everyone, and I think that's
Yeah.
the thing that is a big draw for a lot of people when it comes to Muskoka is that's, like, kind of a generic saying, like, one size doesn't fit all, and
No.
depending on what you're looking for, there's definitely something where you can find that different experience, and if you're somebody who wants to take it slow and go for a paddle, there's that, but if you're looking for motorsports and concerts and all that, there's the same thing, like, you can
There's
really just yeah.
the Key Bala's held one or two concerts over its lifetime, and it knows how to put on a show. And if that's what you're interested in, it's there. And
That's
there's
it. Yeah,
shops and
exactly.
it doesn't matter whether you're in Port Carling or Dorset or Bala, there's small shops and antiques
Yep.
that can be picked up and everything else like that. So it just adds to the atmosphere of being at the cottage.
Yes.
And yeah.
You've had quite the career, quite the journey. So, engineer, CEO, transportation planner, and the restoration business. So, I'd love to hear
Yeah.
like fifth generation builder. We talked about the building group on the last podcast, but I guess building and restoration kind of go hand in hand and understanding how properties are developed and then also understanding those different areas within properties where there's issues that can occur and how to resolve those types of problems. So, I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about the journey
Yeah.
into PuroClean and I guess how that came to
Sure.
be. Yeah.
Sure. I grew up here in Muskoka. and grew up with my father, my uncles, my grandfather out on the lakes, and we were contracting and building. And went away to school, got an engineering degree, spent 20 years working as a consulting engineer, doing various projects from Barrie to Sudbury and all the way up to Wawa and further north. Spent a bunch of time that way, but still always had my hand in the contracting and
Hmm.
was always still working in the contracting side, just spent a bit more time on the design, which gave me a different appreciation for regulations and designing and planning and permitting and everything else like that. And then I returned back to the contracting side, but now armed with the knowledge of how the planning and the development and the building permits go through and and yeah, it all works together within the restoration area because one and done, while lovely in theory, is not the way it works in a building. It's a living thing that is going to have things that need to be repaired that happen to it unexpectedly. And
Hmm.
PureClean works in the casualty property market. So it's always those unexpected things. The power goes out, your sump pump stops, the smoke alarm comes on, you get a smoke from whatever inside the building, and some of it's residential, some of it's commercial, some of it's
Hmm.
institutional. You have the vehicle that happened not to make the corner and is now in your living room and or the tree that decided to come down. We never know what's going to happen. Last year in the spring of 2025, we had a tremendous amount of snow with a lot of ice damming, and then we had 3, 4 days of freezing rain, and created an incredible amount of challenges in the area. Trees, as you know, came down left, right, and center, took down power lines, and some of the trees went into some of the buildings. Some of the trees just took down the power lines, but now the sump pump doesn't work, the fridge doesn't work, and everything else like that. And we had a very busy time last year throughout Muskoka and Simcoe County and Kawartha Lakes, assisting all the cottagers. And some of the times it was even just to get to the property because there was trees all the way down the driveway,
Wow.
and you couldn't even get in because of all the debris and challenges that we just had to get there.
Yeah, like I know we spoke about this before and I just mentioned it earlier, but like all the reasons why we love Muskoka is what makes it such a challenging place to work in and having a lot of trees and a lot of like wilderness, beautiful, but if you have a
Yes,
long driveway and you have a lot of trees that have fallen over, that's a very unique challenge within itself is just like you said, getting to the property and starting the restoration process, but carving a way through to get there.
yes, 100%
Yeah.
carving a way through there, making sure you're safe when you are there. Is the
Mhm.
tree completely down on the ground before you try and get up on the roof and patch the hole in the roof to stop the water from getting inside? Is the electrical still alive and the wire on the ground, or did it get shorted
Yeah.
out? I mean, given all the rocks in Muskoka, we have fewer buried electrical services, so most of them are in the
Mhm.
air, and also a lot more of them have a longer span or run to get into.
Yeah.
And when hydro and the electrical companies are restoring services, they naturally go and spend their crews first to where it gets the most customers back up and active again. So some properties that have electrical services that are only servicing a half dozen properties or even just the one, they're lower down on the totem pole. And of course, Hydro sends their crews to a spot that can fix a transformer that can get 5,000 customers back up and running instead of
Mm.
having the same crew go to a customer that can have, a dozen homes back up and running. But yeah,
Yeah.
all the disasters we face it in other years, we've had flooded roads, obviously with the flooding going through there and areas where you can't get to it. We have other years, like I say, where the water levels are high, and even just coming to island properties over the water, when the dock's underwater, it's hard to dock. Shall I put
Wow.
it that way?
Yeah. I
And
never even
all
thought
these
of
other
that. Yeah. Yeah.
and I mean, hasn't happened this year, but a few years ago, we had really extreme levels on Lake Muskoka to the points that the boats in the boathouses were raising up off their lifts, even to the point of going so high that you couldn't back the boat out of the boathouse because it was now higher up than the opening for the door for the boathouse.
Wow.
And we had some cases where the boats raised so much they were crushing into the ceiling above it, and now the boat's trying to puncture its way up through the ceiling, and the rest of the boathouse, obviously doesn't want that. It's one thing when you just have a open space above it, But when you got a
Yeah.
second floor on the boathouse, and that's where you have another bedroom or a kitchen or a living room, and the boats are underneath are trying to punch up, it creates a whole other issue, shall I say
Oh
that?
my goodness.
And then you're trying to explain this to an insurance adjuster afterwards because you're looking at the boathouse now when the water level's gone down, and you're seeing all the marks across the underside of the floor joist and everything that was above, trying to figure out how it happened there. Well, it's a boat bouncing in the water way up high, and the top of the boat is hitting the underside of the floor joist.
That's incredible. Like, I would have never thought that that could be a possibility. Like, the water levels would have to rise so much in order to
Doesn't
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't happen
Yeah.
often, and it
You've
depends
seen
on the
it.
boathouse. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, these are scenarios that we face with even to the point that you're at that point, and it depends on the boathouse as well. Because if the
Mhm.
boathouse is made out of wood and your dock's made out of wood and the water levels go up, well, the boathouse and the dock want to come up, and sometimes
Mhm.
they shift and the water level goes down and they don't come back down on top of the cribs and the foundation that they were underneath. And now, once again, you're into a repair job. And the
Yeah.
challenge that most people have is every insurance policy is different, and not all insurance policies cover all of these perils. Most insurance policies are written for a standard house or a standard farm, and they don't
Mm.
take into these considerations. And not everybody has that in their policy coverage, or they have bits and pieces of it. And
Yeah.
within this, you're coming into the next level of, so let's take it the scenario where it's a boat floating high up in the boathouse. Well, is that your marine policy for the damage done to the boat, or is that your property
Mm.
policy for the damages done to the boathouse? And the boathouse moves around sometimes, or other years, even if the water isn't up high. We may still have it this year because the ice isn't fully out of the lakes. But now you got a boathouse and you got ice in the lake and you get a strong wind. Well, catching an iceberg on the side of your boathouse as it scrapes along and knocks all the paint off your boathouse or scrapes along the side of the boathouse or whatever.
Yeah.
Once again, some policies cover it, some don't. Some depends what else you have there. Also depends what else is floating in the lake and what other debris and whatever are banging up against the docks and the boathouses and everything inside. So
Wow.
yeah, a bit different in the Muskoka region that we get.
Yeah. You'd be my
And
first call. If I was looking to understand what's going on and what I should ask the company for. Yeah, no, you'd be my first call. That's wild. Now, I got a question for you. So, when you're doing home building, right? You have your foundation, sill gasket, all that stuff. Is it a similar approach of the boathouse? Like, are you bolting down to the foundation of the boathouse, or is it
well, the
like
boathouse
a free
construction
floating? Yeah.
Yeah, boathouse construction has changed over the years. Historically, in Muskoka, we used a crib system where they would cut trees and put cribs in and fill them with stones and rocks, and that's what was the foundation, which extended up from the lake bottom, and that's what you'd
Okay.
support the dock on and support the boat. They were very good systems, but they did have, like everything, challenges in the fact that the top layer of the logs would often rot over a number of years. Once you're down a couple of feet, it doesn't get the oxygen, and those layers are usually good for a long time.
Mm,
And once again, you're dealing with wood that likes to float. Recently, there's been a lot more switch to trying steel piles to be able to use that as a way to support. It works well when you've got a sediment on the bottom of the lake and you can drive the pile into the sediment. But
mhm.
the challenge is if you're trying to drive steel onto bare bedrock, it takes a lot
Uh,
to pound it in, and so
yep.
that the steel doesn't move around and that it actually can support the weight of the boathouse on it. So,
Mm,
depending on the era of the boathouse, will depend whether it's got a wood or a crib foundation or a steel pile foundation underneath it to be able to support it and as it goes through that way. Once again, pluses and minuses depending what corrosion protection you've put on the steel. Steel rusts in water, and some of the joints and the fasteners can rust, and some of them can become brittle with time. But we'll see. It like everything's got pluses and minuses, and not to say
mhm.
that one is terrible and one is terrific, but we'll just see where we go with things over time and see how the newer, and by newer I mean in the last 20 years, so it's not like the last 2 years, but last 20 years we've seen a lot more shift to steel piled foundations for boats and docks. Sorry,
Yeah.
boathouses and docks, not boats.
Yeah, it reminds me of, like, I guess the shift in barn building, where before it
Yes.
seemed like the foundation was pulled from the field and you had rocks and then everything got brought
Yeah.
together and brought into the
Yep.
foundation. So using what's around to build. I know we
Yeah.
touched on that on the last episode about building foundations for houses and moving the biggest rocks to make the foundation
Yep.
and how everything's kind of shifted. Yeah, though, that's really cool. I had no idea that that's how a
Yeah.
lot of them were built by sinking logs, essentially. Cool.
Oh, yeah. So they used to be built where you'd build the crib in the winter on the ice,
Yeah.
and then you'd put boards inside it, and you fill the cribs with rocks that hopefully
Mm,
you had found on shore and you had gathered. Sometimes it was done the season before, so you knew the pile where your pile was, and then you cut the hole in the ice and you shift the cribs over, and you keep filling it with rocks to sink it down in place, and
yeah.
that's how you were able to work it. And that was a preferred way because working with the water splashing and in the summer and all that, it
Yeah.
wasn't preferred. And so you make sure you have your cribs built, and then you can cut the ice out and put your timbers in and run everything else like that. Pile foundations on steel. They don't do it as much from the ice anymore. They actually try and bring in a barge, and you usually use a pile driver, bang, bang, bang,
Yeah.
off of a barge to drive the steel into the rock there. And like I say, depending on what foot they have on the bottom of the pile and how they do it is how they try and make the pile sit on the bedrock so it doesn't move
Mhm.
around. But if you got a lot of sediment and sand, then of course that will hold it from moving sideways, and the
Yeah.
bottom will rest either in the sand or on the bedrock below.
Would there ever be an opportunity to use, like, almost like a hammer drill type application and sink, like, lag bolts into the bedrock underneath, or is the preferred method to, like you said, it sounds like a bit of a yeah.
So the hammer drill can, some people do use it, but it only
Yeah.
works for when you're on shore
Ah, yeah.
because using hammer drill at 20 feet under the water.
Yeah, I was trying to think about the logistics.
Now, sometimes when you have to secure your timbers or whatever you've got on rock, they will use some of the drills in there to do it on the bedrock itself.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but
Cool.
yeah, that is one aspect of what PureClean does, but it's obviously we do the whole amount. We have lots of flooded basements. We have lots of tree impacts. We have different fires. We have smoky chimneys. I mean, a lot of people this time of the year come up for the first time.
Mhm.
The cottage is cold, so they light a fire, not realizing that even if the squirrel or whatever didn't come inside the cottage, which we get a lot of, it built a nest in the chimney, and now all the smoke flows back inside the
Yep.
cottage instead of going up, and you get smoke everywhere. So we get called out at times to do that. I mean, it's only natural. It's cold out. You build a fire in the cottage to warm it up when you get here in the spring.
Yeah.
We also get a lot of calls of whatever, whether it's a squirrel or a raccoon or a skunk or a porcupine decided that indoor living was better than what they had outside, and they choose to live indoor for the winter, but their bathroom skills are not to up to code, and they still need to
No.
be trained. So now we're in there restoring what was left behind, shall I
Yep.
say, from the unwanted visitor. And we're trying to remove odors and remove stains and whatever marks are there
Whatever
from
fun
there.
was left behind. Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah.
fun was left behind. And depending whether they came in the fall, which a lot of them do, or whether they were as a spring denning session. I mean, right now is nesting and mating season for a lot of the animals. And if they haven't given birth to the little ones, they will be soon. And that's why they're trying to be in protected
Mm.
areas for that. So
Yeah.
yeah, we get a number of calls every spring, and as we tell everybody, well, once you've served the eviction notice and you have vacant possession again, we can come along and fix it all up. But we generally like others to do the evicting, and
Yep.
then we come along and fix it up. And many other times we get calls from people, like I say, who there was a winter storm and the tree is no longer vertical, shall I
Mm.
say that way, and it's resting on the cottage, and hopefully it didn't go through a window, hopefully it didn't leave a hole in the roof, but quite often they do.
Yep.
And depending how long it's been since you've last been at the cottage, you may or may not have more of a mess inside, shall I say, from whatever debris from the tree itself or from the water that got inside the cottage.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'd love to learn about that process. So somebody comes to their cottage or they show up for the first time for a few months and they find that sort of that mess. It's either a flood or Rocky the raccoon decided that winter
Yep.
wasn't for them and they'd prefer to they'd prefer to spend the time inside. What does that process look like? Do they get a member of your customer support team and they can help break down what's
Yes.
happening?
Yeah, so people can call us directly, and we'll send one of our project managers out to assess. And there's always different phases in one of these jobs. And the first phase that we deem is the emergency. What needs to be done to make the property clean, dry, and safe? What can we do to remove whatever is unsafe from the tree that's not fully on the ground yet, from the electrical that wasn't fully disconnected from the meter and just ripped off the building? What can we do to make the building dry, from temporary tarping, from roofing, whatever, from putting in our pumps in the basement if your sump pump isn't working? And what can we do to make it dry, first of all? That's the emergency phase. The next couple of phases that usually come in with it is deciding what to do with the contents. When you're a new builder, you usually have a blank slate to work with. When we go into a property that has been damaged, very few of them are vacant. Usually you've got furniture, you have clothing, you have dishes, you have electronics. Were they damaged as well? What
Mm,
what do we need to do to assess to protect the contents within? Third phase sort of goes in conjunction as well is we need to do testing for hazardous material. Some of the properties were built in the 60s, 70s, asbestos was abundant, lead paint was abundant, mercury was used in different heating systems and everything else like that. And if we're going to be working in these older properties, sometimes they require abatement work to be done in it. And then
hmm.
the last phase is the reconstruction or the rebuild. And that's where we put it back together again. And whether that requires just a bit of flooring and drywall and paint, or whether that's a structural repair that needs a full building permit and needs engineering to get your roof back in shape so the trusses, the rafters, whatever have been broken are put back together in the right spot and you can feel safe in your place there. That's the rebuild phase. Like I said, anybody can call us directly. We'll come out, we'll assess, we'll prepare reports. Usually these types of projects are fully or partially covered by insurance, depending on your insurance policy. So we will prepare the necessary reports to send to the insurance companies, and it's up to the insurance adjusters to read your particular policy to see what exclusions or inclusions you have and what your policy contains. And then the insurance company will determine how big of a check they're writing. And like I say, sometimes they cover everything, sometimes they only have a portion. Sometimes people only have a limit of X amount for work in the basement or whatever
Mm,
like that, or full amount for the main cottage, but only X amount for the bunkie or
yeah.
the boathouse or the garage. We never know. We are not insurance adjusters. We're not insurance brokers. We don't write the policies. We don't interpret the policies. But like I said, we'll work with anybody who calls up. We've worked with a lot of variety of insurance companies. We'll prepare the reports, answer the questions, and work alongside as we go through the emergency work, the contents, the abatement, and the reconstruction.
Yeah, and I think that that's such a nice like the fact that your family's been in Muskoka for 5 generations, you're also a home builder, you can bring such a unique perspective and vantage point to all of these different aspects, especially when it comes down to the reconstruction phase. Because probably to I'm just thinking to myself, like it would I haven't had, thankfully, in a situation like this unfold. But if I was in this situation, I would want the company that I was going to for this type of work to have a very
Uh,
full spectrum view of home building and restoration and all that stuff. And also the tenure and
yeah.
experience of working in Muskoka because it's so much different than, working in Mississauga or Oakville or Burlington. It's very it's unique.
Yes, you never know what you're going to get. We never know. We always have the fun. Yes, when we have a thing that we can't access by vehicles, whether it's because trees are in the road or it's a summer maintained road only and it hasn't been plowed, or whether it's water access only or on an island. We go out there and, we try and do it all. Part of
Yeah.
my experience and my team's experience is we have people here with 30, 40 years experience. The building techniques have changed and the things change over the years and how houses are. And when you're doing the restoration, less than 1% have full blueprints and drawings, and they know exactly what their place was built out of and
Yeah.
everything. 99% of the time, you're trying to guess. You're trying to figure it out. How does this work? How does this put together? You're also trying to figure out, where and how construction was done in the years gone by, because it's not the same. And similarly, how are we going to do it these days? How are we going to put it together? I can remember one claim, I have multiple different things there, but one claim in particular. I was called out to this customer, and we were actually the third restoration company called out. They had a 110-year-old log cottage with cathedral ceiling, round timbers, logs all the way around. And then they had a tree that was probably about a 110-year-old pine tree, this big around, you couldn't put your arms around it, hit the roof, cracked one of their main timbers in the roof. Well, the character of the place, cathedral ceiling, round logs, all the square nails from everything else like that was in that. And it was really important to them to retain it. And nobody else had the idea how to do it, but we went in there. We took some pieces of the timber out, figured out with some furniture makers what exactly type of log it was. We sent somebody out searching, found a tree, cut the tree down, took all the limbs off the tree, debarked the tree, rolled the tree around on a driveway in black asphalt to let it dry out, took the tree, went to the old cottage, lifted the roof up, took the old log out, took out all the square nails from the blacksmith, put them aside, took the log out, put the new log in, cut it to place, put it back in there, put the square nails back in so it all has it there. And then we took out some stain to match it up because it had yellowed over the years to be able to make it so that this place had that character, had that appeal, went back together again. And then we put the roof back down and put the chinking in the logs, and that was a happy customer.
That's incredible. Talk about customer service. That is incredible. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
No
That's
problem.
yeah, like having a property like that and it's been in the family for so long. And I can only imagine the gut-wrenching feeling when you first saw it or when the individual that owned the cottage first saw it and going,
Yeah.
no, this is completely going to ruin how I feel about this property. But by working with you, they've gone ahead and found a very unique solution. And talk about a custom solution. That's man, oh
And the
man.
other two restoration companies, not to knock them,
Yeah,
but Home Depot only sells square lumber.
nominal.
It doesn't
Yep.
sell round. We were up there, measured the diameter of the log so we could find a tree that we could cut
Yeah.
down that had the right diameter of it to bring it up there. And these are the challenges. These are the things that we go to try and say, what is it that matters to you about the place? What is it matters to you? Because it's not just the material, it's the atmosphere, it's being able
Yeah.
to live on to those traditions. And a lot of these places have been passed down from generations. And you do have that experience there that you're going, I want to feel this way.
Yep.
And that's the important part. And that's what we always try and do.
That's incredible. And that yeah, no, like PuroClean being a very large network of franchises, but having that very local, very personal feel to it, I think that's exactly what I'd be looking for when it came down to like working with a restoration partner is having that expansive network and support, but then also having a guy like
Having
you
the
show up and
ability,
being like, "Hey, this is actually how we're going to make this work for you in a way that's going to make it feel authentic to
uh,
how things were before and not look like a big giant patch on your favorite pair of jeans."
uh, you know, not only are we lucky, sometimes we have to break brand news to them, but there's
Mm.
other times. We had another one that, like I said, it was a contents and it was a hutch that the grandmother had brought to Muskoka that had all the china in and everything else like that that got damaged once. And we went out there and we brought the hutch back to our shop and we found a furniture restorer and we brought it to them and they put it all back together there. And we took all the contents, all the dishes and everything in it. We cleaned all the dishes and boxed them all up at the same time. And then when the hutch was ready, after we had done all the rest of the repairs to the cottage, we brought the hutch back and we brought all the dishes back and we made sure the silver was polished because it was actually true silverware and put it all back. And that's part of just making sure that we're there and recognizing that there's a person, there's a human
Yep.
behind the building, behind the structure. There's a story, and we need to respect that and go with what we can do to keep it going.
There's so much of a human connection when it comes to restoration because truly you're going into people's homes that have been affected in a large way by something completely unexpected. And that,
And
yeah, that
unexpected is the
TLC is so
key.
needed. Yeah.
Yeah, there is nobody who says next Thursday, I think, is when I'm going to have my washing machine explode and send the water everywhere. Nobody plans.
No.
We're always unplanned. We're always the unexpected. And in cottage country, it's always a disappointment because most people find it when they were coming up to have a relaxful weekend,
Yep.
to have the week off, and that's when they find it
Yep.
and their plans are squashed. And we have to do what we can as we can. Like I said, we work with the insurance companies and we work with the homeowner and we try and come up with a plan to be able to see what works within what the insurance company is willing to cover and pay for, and what works within the homeowner, what they're wanting to do and able to do.
Yeah. Question for you. So, if someone who has, knock on wood, hasn't had an issue like this before, or somebody who has, is there any knowledge that you'd share as we go into the spring thaw period? Is there
Yeah,
anything that people can kind of keep an eye on prior to that might give some
sure.
guidance?
I mean, it is overall cottage maintenance, home maintenance. If you have dead trees, don't wait for Mother Nature to take them down. You take down the dead trees because that way they go where you want to cut them, not
Yeah.
where the stormwater lands.
Yeah.
If you have a sump pump, check to make sure the discharge line doesn't come out this far from the house so the water's just going and it's got a spot for the discharge line. If you have eaves troughs and they're not by any means mandatory, but are they cleaned out? Are they ready to go? If you have access if you have culverts or whatever in your driveways, make sure they're cleaned out so the roadways can go, the water can go through and under the roadway. Different things just help out. If you have an old fuse panel, make sure you have some spare fuses on top of the panel so that if you do have an electrical surge, you've got the fuses to be able to put back in. Different things like this happen. The other thing that is very important, take pictures.
Mm.
Take pictures so you see what it's like before, because it's always hard to take pictures afterwards to know what it
Yes.
was like, to know what happened.
Yeah.
And the same thing for animals and raccoons and squirrels. Make sure that you've plugged all your holes. Make sure there's no attic or crawl spaces that have access into them. Make sure your soffits are cleaned and all across. And just make sure that the little things are done, so that life is hard for them to get a key to enter into your place.
Yeah. No, I think the photo thing is a really important suggestion. In the example used before at the boathouse, I'm sure boathouses are typically not a spot where there's a big photo shoot going on, and maybe in the
Yep.
main entertainment area, sure. But yeah, getting
Yep.
those different documentations down has to be super crucial, super crucial. Let's say somebody's listening to this podcast and they're thinking to themselves, how bad does it have to be for me to reach out to Eric? Is there any guidance you can share there? When should
Yes.
people reach out, or how should they reach out?
So obviously, whenever it's beyond what you can do yourself,
Yeah.
we're here to help. As far as insurance coverage, usually it does not make sense to have your insurance involved until it's at least twice, sometimes three times your deductible. So if you got
Mhm.
$1,000 deductible, you want about $3,000 worth of damage to your place. If you have a 10,000 deductible, you want at least 20, sometimes 30,000 worth of damage to your place. But recognize it will come out and will help you and will do the work regardless of who's paying the bill. We're
Mhm.
there to do it. And obviously take yourself into consideration. Some people try and soldier on and do it themselves, but that's not a relaxful time at the cottage if you're having to come up every weekend to do the next job, the next task. And sometimes for your peace of mind, your sanity, it's worth hiring the experts. It's worth hiring the people who've done it for years to help you out there so you can enjoy the summer, you can enjoy the water, you can get the suntan, and you can have a beverage or two and enjoy yourself here like many do.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Focus on getting a tan, not,
Yeah,
taking a DIY stab at a home renovation. Yeah, unexpected
exactly.
too. Yeah. Actually, I
Yeah.
thought of a question earlier, but it went off my mind. As we get into more of the IoT world and we've got different things like Ring doorbell cameras and stuff, do you notice a trend or an emerging trend when it comes down to having a remote sensor in the basement or things like that, where people can say, hey, there's a flood or there's a certain level of moisture in the air. I'm in Toronto, however, I'm here. Like, just to give them a bit of a head start if there's a problem from a distance.
So there are those things, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're great. Sometimes they give false readings. Some
Ah,
people get
okay.
panicky when the power
Yeah.
goes out and they can't see it and they have concerns. Sometimes it's the easiest thing. Have a switch and turn your pump off when you leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
way, the pump's not running continuously if there is a break in the line. Because other times I've seen it where there's been a break in the line, they left the pump running, and for 5 days it was pumping water out of the lake and into the cottage,
Oh,
and there was no
oof.
stop because nobody was there. And if they had it just went click and turned the pump off,
Yeah.
then they would have had the water that was in the lines of the cottage, but that's
Yep.
it.
The buck would have
They
stopped
wouldn't
there.
have
Yep.
right there, then and there,
Ah,
and away they go. So, like I said, certain things to make sure you turn the water off, turn the power off, make sure that you have photographs, make sure that you've taken care of the dead trees, the dead limbs, make sure you keep up on your repair and maintenance. Those things all go a long way to be able to assist.
lovely. Great advice. Great advice. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for coming on the podcast. It's great to have you
No
on here
problem.
again. And I know if people are looking to get into touch, we'll share the website in the call notes, or sorry, not the call notes, sales guy, in the episode notes below. So is that? I'm guessing that's the best way for
Yeah.
folks to get into contact. Yeah.
Or give us a call. We have crews on 24/7. Our telephone number is 705 710 0606. And we'll love to take your call. And evenings and weekends too. We still have a project manager on call, and he'll walk you through, or she will walk you through, and what are the next steps, and whether this is a weekend visit or something that can wait for a few days, and we'll show up during business hours and daylight hours as well.
Lovely. Awesome. Well, thanks, Eric. I really appreciate you coming on again, and have yourself a fantastic day.
Well, thank you very much. Have a great day.
See ya.
Bye bye.